Hello, welcome to Disputed Boxing. We're back, midweek edition to discuss what next for Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. This has been a topic of a little bit of debate between Rick and I, so we just thought let's roll it out in a video, see what everybody else thinks. Yeah, now we've had a few more days to digest. I thought it was good to sort of gather our thoughts. If you're new to this channel, still very small, but if you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. Yeah, what are your sort of general thoughts now that the dust has settled, Rick, on Fury Wilder 3, the trilogy?
So the fight, yeah, mine's not changed much from last time. I think it's one of those really. What's made me smile a little bit is I think Fury is getting too much credit,
really,
for the win. A little bit, yeah. I mean, I'm seeing things like David Haye going, I was ringside, and that for me makes Fury the best in his era. It's like, surely that therefore you thought he was best in the era before he did what he just did, because he actually that was a worse performance this time round. To me, his performance went backwards. So if you're saying that, for me, should not mean you put it, is the thing that made you go, he's the best in his era. That should have been before this fight.
Yeah.
That's the thing for me. There's a lot of people going, give him credit. You beat Wilder in Wilder's backyard, then it's always credit, but it's someone he's already beaten before. And I was actually expecting it to be a bit easier than that.
Yeah.
He made hard work of it. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have any credit. I just find it weird how everyone's going, I don't know. They're almost like giving him too much credit for that win than what I am, because he's done it before. He's not proven. Last time he proved something to me, he shocked me. Not just that he won, the way he won. So I gave him loads and loads of credit for that. Massive credit for that. He went and did what he'd done before, and he made it harder work for himself. So I'm struggling to give him tons.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think if we're talking about this generation, if we're talking about post-Klitschko era, and I don't think there's going to be any kind of emerging heavyweight in the next sort of 3 or 4 years. We're still talking about a reign of 2015 from when Klitschko first got beat to 2023, 2024. He's in the conversation, but I think he's maybe 2 fights away from being declared the best of this generation. And at the moment, as the cards are stacked as they are, you probably would say it is Fury. If Usyk was to beat AJ again and then beat Tyson Fury, then obviously there's a very strong argument for Alexander Usyk, especially what he did at cruiserweight. I mean, Usyk actually has a better resume. He's had a better run than Tyson Fury. Fury has been very stop-start with his career. But I think it's funny, like at the fights, his success and his peaks, that is what he'll be remembered for. People won't be talking about Tyson Fury against Sefer Safiri in 20 years' time. They'll be talking about the Wilder trilogy, and those are the ones that will live in the memory. And I think maybe that's what people are kind of referring to.
Yeah, it's but that's what happens in boxing. I mean, like good old Lewis, he had some dodgy performances, and obviously he got knocked out a couple of times. And even when he came back, and even fights in between, he didn't look great. And if you were to kind of stop his career at one of those points, you wouldn't think of him in the way people think of him now. So it is just some of those, not many of them, but defining moments. And don't get me wrong, the trilogy with Wilder is a big factor. But you're right. I mean, if they're all their careers were to end now, you probably do have to say Fury was the number one. But you'd be left with but it was. There's a lot of debate to be had, because he didn't fight. I think he's one fight away from actually crowning himself. And it is the winner of AJ Fury. I think if he AJ Usyk, I think whoever wins that, and if he fights them, that is
that's the nail in it. Yeah, I think so. And then the AJ is almost kind of an exhibition. And I think he will fight AJ, but I could see it maybe happening maybe 2 or 3 years from now. It would just be like one of those sort of exhibitions.
What if AJ gets beat?
Yeah.
But
anyway, so the $1 million question, and everybody's asking now, everybody's trying to predict what happens next. We obviously know that the WBC have already declared, providing Dillian Whyte comes through against Otto Wallin, which is no foregone conclusion, he will be declared mandatory, and they'll have 30 days to book a unification or undisputed fight. If not, then they've got to start negotiations with Dillian Whyte's camp, if he is, of course, victorious. I personally, just let me start off by saying this. Personally, as a boxing fan, I 100% want to see Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte, because I think there's so many factors that make it exciting. The build-up, the Frank Warren versus Eddie Hearn, Bob Arum. I actually think it's a very good fight anyway. I just think the whole thing, it'll be a boxing kind of carnival. Sign me up. I'm in. £45 pay-per-view. I'm in. But I am probably, I think,
£200 ringside, but £200 stadium ticket, mate.
I probably give this fight about 10% chance of happening. Yeah, Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury. I think like it's a 10% chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that I don't agree with that. I think I don't know if it's 50-50, but I think Dillian Whyte is the most likely fight next for Fury, though it's not. It's probably less than 50% because there's so many other potentials. But I think my view on it is if he doesn't fight him, he has to relinquish the belt. It sounds like, and I'm going off that fact. And unfortunately for him, I think that belt, because of the other belts being together, is worth quite a bit. In a normal world, or when the belts are more fragmented, and say Joshua and Usyk were just rematching over one, maybe a bit different. And some of this will depend on, if things are, some of the bodies called, mandatories at, a certain time. But I think if he gives up that belt, he's losing his ticket or there's a high chance he's losing his ticket to the winner of Usyk and AJ, because I do believe that both of them will see the undisputed fight against Whyte, if he is on, as something they will want to go after rather than Fury. And the reason I think that is all Joshua and Hearn have ever spoke about is the road to undisputed, and it's easy to make with Whyte.
Yeah,
very easy, and it's a fucking big payday.
Yeah,
so it's not like it's we'll do, and it's very winnable.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same for Usyk in the fact that, okay, he's never gone about undisputed, but there's never, well, I don't know the last time, it's been a long time since there's been an undisputed heavyweight champion. And I don't think there's ever been a cruiserweight undisputed and heavyweight undisputed. So I know sometimes people say, the belts don't matter. I think that's right when they're fragmented. But I think this time both camps will see that it trumps the Fury fight, in my opinion, and I might be wrong, but and I think therefore, I mean, if Fury doesn't believe that and thinks that they'll just come for him anyway, then he might just say, I'm not bothered about fighting Whyte, and I'll take some easy fights. But basically, he won't fight one of them two until next September.
No. Well, he won't anyway. Fury won't fight either Usyk or AJ now until end of next year anyway. And
that's the earliest, because if they pick to go and fight Whyte, then will there be a rematch in that? Will there be a rematch clause? So if it is AJ that comes through and he has to fight Whyte for undisputed, and there's a rematch clause because both are bringing something to the party, does that then push it back further? So I think, and maybe Fury won't do this calculation in his head like I am. I think if he doesn't fight Whyte, he falls out of line to fight the winner of those two, and therefore may not fight them until 2023.
That's where I disagree.
So you think then that the winner of that will pick the Fury fight over the undisputed?
I think AJ is the
Can't
one
do
that's
both.
fixed. Yeah, AJ is the one that is fixed on undisputed. So yeah, he probably will want that undisputed. But the undisputed fight is worthless if it's not Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury is the consensus number one. Most would agree that Tyson Fury is number one. And
But without the belt, it's not undisputed.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so if he wants undisputed, he has to go after the belt.
Yeah, and that is most probably what he will do. But I mean, that's kind of a side issue. The point that I'm making is I don't believe Tyson Fury fights Dillian Whyte. I just don't see a world in where that happens, because he's just come off the back of two, back-to-back fights with Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury's MO is he'll take a couple of easy touches, i.e. Tom Schwartz, Otto Wallin, who was supposed to be an easy touch, but wasn't. Even when he was supposed to be in between the Wilder fights, he was talking about fighting Simon Keane, Ajit Kabayel,
Yeah, I hear you. I think the difference here is this is the first time he's ever defended a belt.
Yeah, but he doesn't give a shit about the belts. That's the point. He doesn't, like, if he gets stripped of WBC title, he won't care. He's still Ring Magazine. Do you remember when before he got anything, he was the Ring Magazine champion? That is what he'll use that kind of ticket. And I think the Fury fanboys, and I'm neither, by the way, I'm a Fury fan and I'm an AJ fan, but the Fury fanboys, I think, will give him a pass. They won't think any less of him for fighting Dillian Whyte, because you got to think about it as well. His motivation to fight a guy that was beat by AJ 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, 6 years ago. Where's he going to get the motivation for that fight? I mean, Dillian Whyte's been on a good run, and he's obviously a credible top 5 or 6 fighter, but he gets very little credit for beating Dillian Whyte. And actually, it's a tough fight. I mean, you'd have to say his favorite, but I just don't think he'll want it.
Well, it'll get very little. There's no better fight out there, in the public's eyes. But you're right, he could take a rubbish fight. But I think my point is, you're right. Some of what you're saying is not out of his character, other than all those other times he wasn't a belt holder. And if he does do this, he's pushing the fight he probably really wants, the winner of Usyk and AJ, potentially into the long grass, because there's a high chance they'll go after the belt, not after him. Yeah. But if he doesn't believe that, then you might be right. If he thinks, they'll come after me after they've had it out, then he might do it. He might.
I just think he'll do it irrespective of what he thinks that they'll do.
Yeah. So you just think where's he going with this then? Does he even want to fight one of them two?
I think
that just makes it sound like he doesn't care. He'll float around and he might retire, not fight any of them.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if he takes 6 months out, or he declares he retires as champ, and then he makes a comeback in a year's time from now. Has an easy touch, and then fights whoever's the big dog, whoever's the champ at the time, whether it's Usyk, AJ, White, Wilder again. I really could see him taking a bit of a layoff. I think I was listening to an interview yesterday with John Fury, and he's massively playing down Dillian Whyte, fighting Dillian Whyte, which kind of adds fuel to my theory that he's not gonna go anywhere near him. I wouldn't be surprised if he just takes 6 months out, takes 12 months out, declares retirement, takes a bit of time out, and yeah.
Maybe I'm blinded by hope.
Yeah,
I'd like to think he wouldn't do that, and I think he likes fighting. I think he only had that time out because of his mental state.
Yeah.
And he was gutted. I think he was getting frustrated because he couldn't fight regularly. He wasn't as good a fight. He wasn't in good of a shape this time because he's not been fighting regularly. So I think him taking a year out is even less unlikely than him just going, I'll take I'll drop the belts and go elsewhere. But I don't know. It's not a great look though if he swerves him. I know the fanboys will give him a thing, but not everyone's a Fury fanboy.
No, they're not. Well, how much of a bad look was it when he beat Wilder in everybody's eyes in the first fight, but it was declared a draw? And then he's like, right, bring me AJ, bring me this, bring me that. He was declaring war on every boxer under the sun. And then he fights Tom Schwartz, who I think lost to Derek Chisora, or
yeah, it wasn't a great look, but to be fair, I think people were like, actually, that was a big ass to have two crap fights and get into the ring with Wilder. So I think he got a pass for that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And yeah, you could say he beat him, but it was still a draw, and he got dropped twice. This was 2 resounding beatings.
Yeah.
And he's got the belt. So I don't compare the two.
No.
Nothing will 100% surprise me, Wild, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think 10% chance of him fighting White is a bit too slim for me. I think there's better chances.
What percentage chance would you give it then that Tyson Fury fights Dillian Whyte next?
30 or 40.
Yeah, so that's still pretty low.
Yeah, but only because there's so many different other things that could happen.
Yeah, okay. Dillian Whyte beats off
it's still 3 or 4 times more likely than what you're saying.
Yeah. As I say, I hope I'm wrong, but yeah. So Dillian Whyte beats Otto Wallin. You think Fury White is next?
I think that's the most likely. Yeah. Yeah. But then, I'm not saying any of what you're saying definitely can't happen. I just, and especially with Fury, he's so unpredictable. But he's not in a bad mental state at the moment. I think the belt is important. I think the belt is more important than he lets on. And I think there's whether he judges it the same way as I do. I think if he gives up the belt, he's kicking the biggest fight of all into the long grass.
We've also got to take into account Frank Warren, Balbaram. They've got to work with Eddie Hearn. They've got to get to a deal, which again is not. We all know that's not straightforward. Eddie Hearn doesn't trust them whatsoever. They'll obviously try and do what they can to get Dillian Whyte themselves. You've obviously got the TV network. There's so many factors, and I don't think they would want to go up against DAZN in a purse bid. So if it does go to purse bids, I just think they'll pull out. I don't think they'll be up for that, because I think it's fair to say DAZN would probably win that purse bid. They seem to have they have more money in the pot.
Yeah, if you say pull out, do you mean it's like they're going to turn around to Fury and go, "You've got to give up your belt"?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Fury has a good relationship with Maurizio Sulaiman as well.
Isn't Fury out of contract now? Isn't that his 5th fight with Top Rank?
I have no idea. Don't know about that. I think that is his 5th fight actually. Yeah. So, but I can't. Where would Tyson Fury just then promote himself? He seems to get on pretty well with Bob Arum, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. But like you
say, and then of course, you've obviously got the franchise champion. That's, I think, WBC have ruled that out, but we all know they can change their mind.
Now, if they haven't been so explicit in their statement, I would have thought that is a possibility. Well, let's be honest. He's only kind of won the belt and defended it once. He's never been anywhere near it other than that.
Yeah.
He never had it in his past era when he beat. So. No. That's a real stretch to give him that. What? Won it and defended it once.
I know, but there's no rules around this franchise champion. It's just.
No, you're right. There isn't, but it's even that's hard. That's a hard push for the WBC.
Yeah. Anyway, we could debate this all day. I think. I think we'll see, won't we? Well, I guess, and we haven't got long to find out. I think we'll probably know by November, December, what's going to be happening. We all know Dillian Whyte likes to be active. He'll want to know what's going on. They'll be putting pressure on WBC. But I'll say my prediction, and I could be way off, is Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder for a vacant WBC belt, which actually wouldn't be a bad fight either.
Yeah, see, I don't think Wilder will get thrown back in that quick. I know you could say, did it happen with Stavern, or did he have one fight when he came up?
He had one fight again, and then he got put back in as mandatory.
Yeah, I think that'll be too quick. If he can't fight for 6 months, he'll then want to warm up. I think more like Ruiz is more likely to get another good fight.
Yeah, would be.
I mean, I know we're going to go on to Wilder, but I've heard things like Ruiz is going to be fighting Charles Martin at the end of the year, and then the winner fights Wilder.
Right.
But I don't know. You've got to think Wilder needs some kind of easy touch to come back on.
Yeah, I think he will do. think he will do
which
now.
takes time. If you can't fight for 6 months, so that's when's the earliest you can fight in kind of like April, May.
I don't see. Yeah, I don't see Deontay Wilder in a big fight until.
It won't be in a big fight till about a year's time.
Yeah, 2023. That's when Deontay Wilder is in a big fight. He'll have an easy touch second half of next year once he's completed his 6-month suspension by the boxing board in the US. And rightly so.
Why are you saying you're predicting he'll fight?
Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Well, okay, for a vacant belt, Dillian Whyte versus somebody for a vacant belt, whoever's high up on the WBC.
Yeah, probably Ruiz or Charles Mark if them two fight. I can't remember the rank. I remember Ruiz being quite open to WBC. Either way, I think if he gets through Wallin's Whyte, he'll be getting a shot, which I'm pleased for him.
Yeah.
And whoever it is, it should be a great fight because it could be Fury, which will be great. And it could be Ruiz, which would also be great, different but great. It won't be a great build-up as much, but a good fight.
Yeah, Ruiz against Dillian Whyte is a cracking fight. I love that.
Yeah, it's not a great build-up though, is it?
Probably not. No, I mean Dillian Whyte gets in most people's faces, but I think Andy Ruiz, from what I can recall, is pretty respectful. Yeah.
It could be a little bit Povetkin-y build-up, maybe a little bit spicier.
A bit spicier than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Can we? Are we rocking out any more news? Is there any other news? Got some fights coming up. Hughie Fury versus Christian Hamer is this weekend, isn't it, on Sky? Shaka Stevenson versus Jamal Herring week after that, and then week after that is the big one, Dillian Whyte versus Otto Wallin, and then week after that is Canelo versus Plant.
More undercard gets announced this week, I think, for Wallin's fight. So
yeah,
one for us to keep an eye on, see what time we want to get to our seats.
Yeah, Alan Babbage hasn't got a opponent yet, has he? And I know he's on the undercard.
No, isn't it the Aussie?
Oh, Lucas Brown.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's not been announced on BoxRec though. Still.
Is it not?
No, it's not been declared yet.
Oh, I hope it. I mean, it's weird. It's like it's not a great fight, but it is. You know what I mean? I'll be absolutely there, glued to my seat for that one.
Yeah, that is a don't blink. Yeah, Babbage is always good. I think Johnny Fisher's on there as well. So yeah, it'd be good. It does need beefing up a little bit. I think the undercard. It wasn't anything that kind of stood out for me.
Yeah, my thing is it's not pay-per-view anymore, so it's like I just wonder if the big shows are as good anymore.
Oh, it's not pay-per-view. That's right. Yeah.
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 So.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see. Other news. I think Wilder's come out with a statement that kind of, I don't know if he didn't really congratulate him, but he just said he came to kind of lean on me and wear me down or something, and so it was a kind of wasn't a well done mate, you beat me kind of thing. It was a bit you did this, you did that. What's your take on? I've seen a few people do this or talk about this, and Warren's jumped on it as well, which is typical him. Have you seen this footage? I mean, I have seen it, but I don't really make much of it. Apparently Joshua's corner about to throw the towel in.
No.
Yeah, there's I've seen it a couple of times, a bit of footage, and basically, when he's like knackered in the final round and he's on the ropes, and I mean, I didn't think much of that. You know what I mean? He was knackered. He was going backwards. But
I remember it being a really bad round, probably the worst of those last four.
Yeah.
That last one was probably the worst.
It was more through tiredness than he got chinned or anything. He did get caught, don't get me wrong, and they were having effect. I'm not saying he was finishing strong or anything, but this whole thing was he was about to get knocked out. I mean, he hadn't even been down once, and he wasn't like he's all over the place. He was he did sink back to the ropes.
Yeah.
And actually, in the last few seconds, Usyk had kind of stopped throwing punches because Joshua was just moving out of the way. Yeah. But around that time, it just shows a white towel, and it is from Joshua's corner around there being swung around. And I just think it's almost like, well, it's the end of the fight kind of thing.
Right.
Because you don't, you throw a towel in, you don't swing it round and fuck around with it, do you?
No.
But if you go back and watch it, again, it just shows people just jumping on it. I mean, come on, it's like seconds from the end of the fight that he's probably lost. But why on earth would you throw a towel in? It's not like he's been absolutely battered and it's a career ender and he's been down several times. But like Warren's jumped on it, you know what I mean? He said it in one of his interviews. He was, oh yeah, well, they nearly threw the towel in, and does he really want the rematch and all that stuff?
Well, that's obviously the narrative they're going to be pushing, aren't they? They're heavily in the Fury camp, and Eddie Hearn does the same thing. He'll be playing down, Fury's achievements, and you'll never get anything objective, from them.
Yes, I don't think he has. In the interviews I've seen with him and his dad, the only sliding they've done. I don't think Hearn would go, "That's throwing the towel in." By the way, I think you are right. They all go at it, but I actually think Warren and Aaron are far worse than Hearn.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, for
in
sure.
Every department. You know what I mean? They kick people out of press conferences. At least Hearn continues speaking to people. But both him and his dad have gone. One of the best heavyweights fights for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Great win for Fury. The only slight dig is technically, it wasn't great, but it didn't have to be. It was great setting. But they're right.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
That's the only slight dig.
Well, you kind of, yeah. I mean, they have to say that. They cannot slate that fight, and because it kills their own credibility. I think Frank Warren jumped on when AJ beat Klitschko, and Warren just gets he gets all the hate, he gets attacked, doesn't he, online. So you kind of, that's one of the good things about social media. We're not going to be bullshitted anymore. People have to kind of say things as they are, and if they don't, then they kind of lose their credibility.
I mean, it was kind of, instead of like, for that one from memory, rather than going, oh, great win for AJ, it was this kind of thing of, he did your play, he looked vulnerable and he got dropped and all this stuff, and he was over-leaning. And I mean, Hearn did touch on it, and he just said, Fury is a bit vulnerable, but he's so good in other departments. But he's right. He's not over difficult to kind of get knocked down, Fury. We've seen when you do connect, he's got great chin in sense. He gets up and his recovery is really good. But to get him down is not too difficult if you manage to hit him. And I actually think he's getting easier to hit. He's becoming easier to hit.
Yeah.
Because he's more aggressive now. If he fought Whyte, whether he thinks he can do the same thing or whether he'll box a little bit more, don't know.
Last question. Do you think Tyson Fury retires undefeated?
No.
You think he gets beat by somebody?
Yeah. I just think we're in a bit of an era where, like, it wouldn't surprise me if, I don't know, Usyk beats Joshua, Fury beats Usyk, Joshua beats Fury, something like that. Do you know what I mean? I just think that there's merry-go-rounds like that, and maybe Fury beats them all, but then maybe goes on. He might retire for 2 years, come back,
and then
ruin his legacy a bit. That can happen.
I think there's a very good chance of him doing that as well. And but then people again will give him a pass and say, oh, well, he wasn't at his best. I think even if AJ runs through Usyk next year, then beats Fury, I think most Fury fanboys would say, oh, well, Fury was, he was past his best. Fury is the greatest. I just think it'll just be a constant debate now. But yeah.
I think if someone beats someone, and especially, I mean, you'd like to think if they do fight, there'll be a rematch. And if someone beats someone twice, no one's, because then you could just say, oh, well, Fury beat Wilder twice, but he'd probably gone past his peak. He was 35, 36.
Yeah, it's like Lennox. It's like Lennox never really gets like the credit for being the Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was washed by the time he fought him, and he doesn't really get the credit for, and rightly so. He was kind of well past his best.
So he was seen as the best in his era, I think. But then you could probably say, but then you could probably argue that Tyson crossed two eras.
Yeah, he kind of did, but he peaked very early as well. Mike Tyson was probably done in his late 20s.
Yeah, so he was probably the best in kind of one era, and then a player in the second.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap
All
it
right.
up. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch up again next week. Do some boxing news and some more predictions.